Hello, and welcome to Pressure Point. I'm your host. My name is Valerie Dudoward. Our topic this program, Canadian Justice Must Prevail, the Nisga'a Land Question. I'd like to welcome our guest for the program, Nelson Leeson. Welcome, Nelson.
Thank you very much.
You are the Chair of Public Education for the Nisga'a or Nisga'a Tribal Council, as well as one of the members of the negotiating team. One thing that I wanted to ask you about right at the top is how your involvement started in this.
Well, I think for me it started as an early age. That's all I heard as a youngster from uncles, aunts, and attending meetings, conventions. And I was convinced that there was a place for us out there. And so for 18 years I've been part of this Nisga'a Tribal Executive in some form or manner, whether as staff or elected, and served in the capacity of all the various working committees.
I think that probably the public is somewhat aware of the fact that it has been more than 2 decades that the Nisga'a have been in formal negotiations over land, but I think a lot of people really aren't aware of how far back the informal discussions have gone.
About 130 years. By our count of people meeting, talking about this issue. Of course, the meetings continued, but in 1955, under Dr. Calder, the Nisga'a Tribal Council was born and re-emerged. And so the actual discussions, I guess, with the federal government started in '76, and this January 12th we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary in this long road to us arriving at a just and honorable settlement.
So some people have spent perhaps more than half their lives aging gracefully at the negotiating table.
That's true. Some of us wonder, what are we going to do after this is done? And certainly we're all very anxious because we're quite close in a lot of areas at coming to the agreement in principle, and our people are looking with great anticipation and much optimism to see us conclude these discussions.
And what will the future look like after that? What do you envision?
I envision a lot of hope, aspirations that people have, the dreams that could be fulfilled. We have really pushed our youth, for instance, to go and get as much education or specialize in different areas. Because what it's going to do is not make us rich people, but create opportunities. A lot of opportunities that we're not able to come forward with and generate, given the conditions that we were living under for all those years. And we know that the work just begins after the settlement to make these things happen. And certainly the stability that's going to bring to the region, the justice issues that are all going to be dealt with, is going to be mutually beneficial to everybody. And we are really optimistic that there is going to be a good future ahead of us.
You spoke very, very eloquently, I thought, at a meeting of the First Nations Summit, at which representatives of the Union of BC municipalities were in attendance. And you talked about some of the things that the Nisga'a have been involved with in terms of including people in information in your region.
We have had, we did joint ventures, tripartite discussions, open houses. We met with unions, we met with municipalities, we met with regional districts, we met with churches, we met with corporate people. We met with just any people if they wanted us to come and talk to them, sharing and telling them the types of things that we were discussing and our hopes for the future. And making that inclusive, demonstrating to them that what this was going to do for our region. A settlement, a Nisga'a treaty, is a good thing for everybody because it means massive injection of opportunities, money, the joint ventures that we always talk about, the social unrest that seems to be out there. It frees up the $1 billion or so that's offshore because of the uncertainty. They won't come in and invest. We think there's a heck of a future for all of us to look forward to. And certainly with our people, first and foremost, we have to keep them informed. We have meetings every 6 weeks in our communities. Half our people, or a bit better than half our people, live off the villages. Some in Vancouver, Victoria, Prince Rupert, Port Edward, Terrace. We have elected people from those areas who actually sit down on the General Executive Board, and now some of them are on the negotiating table with us.
That's very different, isn't it, that aspect of how the Nisga'a process works in more than just involving, but in a meaningful way, the many people who don't live in Nisga'a territory.
We think that's crucial. You know, some of our most talented people are those people who live off the territory. A lot of them left for education purposes, health reasons, and certainly jobs. And we know that we're going to be banking on a lot of those people helping us carry out the self-government arrangements that we've negotiated, the opportunities through their special training that all of them have in different aspects of life. And certainly their feedback is crucial to us, and we continue to do that. We also have what we call a community discussions. We travel around and spend 2 days in each community updating them of where we are in regards to the discussions that we're having with both levels of government. Something
that we've been hearing a lot about, we meaning the general public, including First Nations people, as different processes change, and for example, prior to any provincial election, the various parties and their platforms in terms of what they envision for future relations with First Nations people is really an important part of the pre-election process. What political stance does the Nisga'a Tribal Council take in regard to advising your membership or not advising them?
First thing we try to do is make a real effort to get people out to vote. And then we lay out their platforms from each of the respective parties of what they're saying about Aboriginal issues and other issues if they're interested, and let them make their own decision. I think the crucial thing is for people to get out and be involved by voting. After all, we only got the vote in '60s.
A lot of people don't know that. A lot of First Nations people don't realize that it has only been about 35 years since we had the provincial right to vote in provincial elections.
And so, I mean, in every aspect, whether it's a, provincial election, federal election, if they're living in cities, a municipal election, we ask them to get involved because decisions are being made every day that affects our lives. And if you don't get involved, you can't start chomping at the bit and complaining to everybody else. I mean, you have to be involved.
So the Tribal Council does not go so far as to endorse a particular party?
No, not since I've been there. I mean, all of us come from different stripes, but we've dealt with every party there ever was, through federal and provincial elections, and our cause and our issue is still the same. We want that just and honorable settlement to be resolved, and I think it's an absolute winner for some party or all parties, whoever happens to be in power, to support these initiatives.
Something that has been kind of a buzz phrase in the media lately is one law for all, and I guess behind that is the implicit idea that now that, for example, First Nations people have the same rights, democratic rights, as anybody else in the country, what's the problem? And so what's your response to that?
I think it's a smokescreen. I mean, if you look at our country, this great country of Canada, all the provinces have different laws. The municipalities have different laws. And in our discussions, our negotiations, we're not talking about going back 200 years and coming out with these old laws. A lot of them will apply, and they apply to us. But you know, the laws of general application through this agreement will apply. For instance, if you look at the environmental provisions that we're talking about meet or beat factors. In other words, we'll be a lot stricter on the kinds of activities that we're carrying out, because we've been there for 10,000 years and we're going to be there another 10,000 years, and you know, you have to look after the area that you're at, and certainly making the right laws and abiding by those laws is going to help that go a long ways. And I'd like to point out that a lot of the laws that are out there, both federal or provincial, are good laws. It's just that nobody has been applying them.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, we have one fisheries officer that is supposed to look after the whole Nass River territory. You know, you got to feel sorry for the individual. It's a massive area to try to cover. Of course, with our own initiatives in fisheries now, we work in conjunction with DFO. They now have to come to us for information because we've got such a data bank built up. We have more information on the Nass than there ever was before in history. And you know, it's the third largest natural salmon producing river in British Columbia. And it's important, not only to us, but I think to all British Columbians. And I think we're leading the way in demonstrating how that can be done properly, effectively, and to the benefit of everybody.
Something else that many politicians pre-election and at other times talk about is the extreme high costs of the negotiating process and the monies that have been accessed by different First Nations people to further the cause and participation in negotiations. Where do you see that coming from?
Well, as I'd mentioned, I think probably I think we might have been through 15 negotiators, for instance. Remember,
and
it was just the federal side. And hey, we want to get on with it. We think we have something here that we've worked on. We haven't been sitting asleep. We've been developing concepts, developing ideas to make sure that they fit and that people can accept them, that certainly those laws of general application will apply. We want to get on with it. I mean, we don't like being a burden to the taxpayers. I think for a while there, the government thought it would be cheaper just to fund people continuing to negotiate and leading to nowhere. And I think the last 3 years have been very interesting. We've moved forward, and like today, some of us are optimistic and hopeful that we could have a great Christmas present called Agreement in Principle. We're working very diligently to achieve that. We don't like being the drain on the taxpayers. We know that the thing that we're doing is negotiating our way into Canada so we can be meaningful participants. We can walk proud with our dignity intact and be able to make major contributions to this great country that's made up of many, many types of cultural mosaics. And we have a lot to offer. And yeah, we want to get on with it and get on with our lives and be able to demonstrate that we can pull our own weight.
Do you think that it's not possible to have meaningful participation, to have a meaningful place in Canadian society without negotiated settlements?
Well, you know, that's the thing people have to understand. It's really painful for our people to sit there and know what we have to do. You know, what in fact is happening is they're not really giving us anything. It's through negotiations that we're turning and causing that certainty with Canada and British Columbia for the lands and resources. And I'm convinced that we have to move forward in that area and prove to the rest of the world that this can be done. What is the option, you know, if you don't do it? Our people have been downtrodden, and Native people in general, you know, have been down there too long. And it's time that they rise up and take their meaningful place and participate in society as a people with the pride and dignity and the respect that they deserve just as anybody else deserves.
I guess the statements that I sometimes hear as an Aboriginal person from other Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people is, why can't we just get on with things? Why can't we just participate like everybody else and have employment and have our jobs and get loans and create businesses? Why do we have to endure this negotiating process.
Well, I mean, if you look at the life, I mean, people have that option to live. A lot of people can't, say, get away from what they're in. I mean, they're sitting in their communities. We're doing the best we can. I mean, I'm quite proud of the initiatives we've taken. We've taken a 90+% unemployment rate and brought it down to 68 overall. And that's through working diligently, working hard. People don't want to leave their homelands. And the kind of developments that are taking place up there, we are now going to be part of that, not just standing idly by and watching this all happen. It wasn't too long ago, Val, that people couldn't even get a bank loan. You know, I mean, even the reserves that you're living on are owned by the federal government. You know,
Many
they're just
people don't understand
yeah,
this.
and if you look at our traditional territory, it's 24,000 square kilometers. And if you looked at the little dots for all the reserves for the 5,400 that we have in our data bank and 6,000 Nisga'a that we know are out there, it's 76 square miles. A lot of it's just useless land and rock. And we never did. We've got a chronology documented. We never did agree with the reserve system.
76 miles?
76 square miles of little dots of Indian reserves. And a lot of it's just useless area. And you know, to be able to become self-sufficient, you need a lot more than that. You need to be able to have a leg up on where you are today. And we're convinced that through this settlement that will give us the ability to move forward and build our own regional economy to blend in with all the rest of the economies that are out there.
I think I just had a mild heart palpitation when you said you brought the unemployment rate down to 68%. And it really makes me think of sometimes when the Canadian unemployment rate gets into the double digits, as in 10, 11, 12%, or maybe more realistically around 20% given other factors, and people become very enraged and upset by this. And is that very unusual among First Nations people, communities, to have unemployment rates well beyond 20%?
Oh, that's common. I mean, we always say, one of the questions we get asked too is about tax. And we're saying, sure, we're going to pay tax when we can turn our unemployment rate from the 80% down to the 11% that's raging at the Canadian level. And, you know, it's a challenge to go out there and do these things. And people don't want to just get up and leave, you know, where they've always lived. And we think that those opportunities are there and they will be provided by these settlements that we're negotiating. Indeed, other respective First Nations will be doing the same.
One of the many things that I have admired in studying the history of the Nisga'a Nation politically and the Tribal Council in its current form is the amount of attention, commitment, time, financial commitment that the nation has given to the whole area of public education. For example, when you mentioned taxes, I can imagine, you know, that many people have the misapprehension that all First Nations people don't pay taxes, when in fact, unless you're under very certain circumstances, I would normally pay income tax like everybody else. If I were to purchase a home, I would be paying taxes as well. When I go into a store, I pay taxes unless that store is located on reserve. So the whole area that you're involved in with public education has really gone into the media in all different forms.
Yes, I think that's really important. For the most part, if you look at any of the Indian Reserve communities, the unemployment rate is really high. And they pay taxes if they get job creation, like building houses or working on infrastructure. The jobs are really small. And they don't pay taxes there. But you remember their wage, too, is quite a bit down, say, for people doing the same thing out in the municipalities or in the big cities like Vancouver. I think that the reason for us thinking like that and believing in that is that the opportunities are all around us. We want to be able to bring that unemployment down to the Canadian average and be able to be the self-sufficient people that we're talking about and be able to pay our fair share of taxes. That will come. People are now talking about eliminating that tax. I mean, that's a provincial message. the tax break they call it. But that's federal jurisdiction, and they will make that decision, and they have to consult all the Native people right across the country. So they can't do it, say, because they're negotiating with the Nisga'a now, and try to run up a flag and say from here on in, all Native people are going to be paying taxes. That is real technical stuff, and it has to be worked out on the table. We're doing that right now.
As a First Nations person myself, I struggle these days to really try to stay informed about the various political developments that are happening around the negotiating process. And I know that you have been involved in some really exciting initiatives that involve everything from calendars to commercials. Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, we realized we had to get the message out, so we did a fact book. And in the back is a chronology of events starting from when our first meetings happened to the kind of developments that took place. And then we did an Nisga'a government booklet. We did a pamphlet on forestry and fisheries. We've done videos on fisheries. We've done some shows in conjunction with other people. Nisga'a People of the Mighty River, a book that we put together. It's a coffee table book. It won the Best New Book of the Year award a couple of years ago. We're very proud of that because we didn't even know what we're doing when we ventured into doing a book like that. But we feel we have a story to tell. And it's funny, all this information is out there and it's accessible. All they have to do is phone our office and you know, we can package and send them all that information that they want. I think that there's too much emphasis on the sensationalism elements about Indian people. And you have things like the Apex situation, the Oka situation. And if you look at the Oka situation, that could have been resolved probably for some of the land that those people rightfully deserved and some of the money. I heard them talk about $10 million. Well, it costs the governments over $125 million. I hear different figures. I heard $180 million the other day. But still, you think about that. If they were able to sit down and negotiate, be fair, just, honorable, we could avert a lot of these things. And I happen to believe that we need a positive story. And the positive story, I think, can be the Nisga'a Agreement in Principle and Final Settlement. That could have everybody pointing with hope that through determination, through being fair, through being honorable and respectful with people, that you can arrive at those type of deals that allow you to move forward and get on with your lives.
In the area of the Nisga'a, the regional area, have you been able to develop partnerships with any of the non-native concerns? We
have an economic arm. It's called Nisga'a Economic Enterprises. We're quite proud of that group. They're a real success story. They have done joint ventures with other big forestry companies and are doing their logging in such a way that it even environmentalists don't mind. It's like the helicopter show, so there's no ruining of the earth and destroying of streams and all this type of stuff. And they're trying to venture into other things. They're talking to the German market, Japanese markets for fish and other things. All these type of things are happening, and I'm really proud too because all of our communities have worked for years in developing economic strategy and plans for things that could happen. And what they need is, of course, when the settlement happens, we're going to have the ability to move forward and venture into those areas and make things happen. We have all kinds of people through the trade shows we attend who want to do joint ventures with us. As soon as the deal is done, they'll come and, the uncertainty is cleared away. They'll come and do deals with us. So we're talking to people all the time. Yeah, there's great expectation out there.
What do you use personally for yourself as Nelson Leeson to keep you inspired, to keep you motivated through this process? I imagine it must be very frustrating at times.
Oh, well, you attempt to stay involved in your cultural activities.
You have a hereditary name?
Yes,
as well?
my name is Achla Wells. I'm a hereditary chief from the Raven clan. And we tend to that. Of course, spending time with our people and friends. It's not glorious staying in hotels and eating in restaurants and riding cabs. And speaking of who makes the money from that, all the cities benefit from that. We travel all over the place. But it's having friends too in places like Vancouver. We have good friends here that invite us for a meal now and then. And it's excellent because they have families. We get to see children, we get to eat together and talk together and, you know, share our lives. And certainly those of us with children, we think about them, and that gives you a lot of strength because you know you're doing this for them and for their children and the children that will follow. So it's a challenge. It's meaningful. It is sometimes quite frustrating, but it's something that has to be done. And I guess those of us who've really, really stuck to it, it's like something inside of us has sprouted and won't go away until we get this deal done.
The territory of the Nisga'a is absolutely tremendous. I've only seen a small part of it. Could you describe some of the land itself?
Well, it's 24,000 traditional territory, 24,000 square miles. It supports all species of wildlife. We have our people who survive and still survive on the animals there. As I mentioned, the third largest producing salmon river in BC. It straddles the Alaska Panhandle, and we even have a claim that goes 5 miles into Alaska. And we'll deal with that after we're done with Canada here. Because
that's another story.
That's another story. The boundaries were set up without us being involved. But it's a beautiful place. A lot of it has been logged, and you know, to quote a former president, he said, some areas look like a sea of rotting stumps. But we still have optimism and hope that we can rebuild these places and make it the way it is. Even the people, the non-native that live there, are not there because they're speculating. They're there because they love it there. And for the most part, they support any and all the initiatives that we put out. Of course, they benefit from it too. We have our own school district, our own school board.
Yes, I went to the opening of the school, 20 years, I think, next year.
Yeah. And we have our own health board, our own health district. The non-native sector make up maybe 4% of the population there. We give them one board member, that's 20%, to sit there and help make decisions that affect our lives and better our lives in that valley. So those type of things are ongoing. And it's like anybody, I guess, who has a homeland. You yearn for it, you miss it, and it's something that you got to hang on. Even after the settlement, we'll still consider the whole place home. You know?
And so, in terms of Jill and Joe Public who want to get more information, they can contact the Nisga'a Tribal Council?
Yes, they can call our office at 604-633-2601. And we have a lady that works very hard. She's putting packages out every day. And we could give anybody all the information that they want. And we encourage people to come up there. We have a lot of guests coming there, people from other parts of the world, to come and see how we're doing and what we're doing. And invitations to go to their areas, to talk to the Aboriginal people in all the other areas. So it's rewarding in those ways too.
Nelson, thank you very much for being our guest. This has been Pressure Point. My name is Valerie Dudoward. I've been your host. Our topic this program, Canadian Justice Must Prevail, the Nisga'a Land Question.
The preceding program was produced through the facilities of Rogers Community 4, Vancouver. We want to hear from you and invite you to leave your comments and suggestions on our 24-hour response line message machine. Please call 731-5812.